And we're back, and I'm here with my good friend, Reverend Scott Morrow, who's pastor of the Congregational Church here in North Haven. He's been one of my best friends in North Haven, and I'm really glad you can be with us, Scott. So, why are you here? Why are you here for this Foundation for Orphans Cyberthon?
Well, I'm here because of you, because you're my colleague, because this is a passion that you have in your life, and because it just pulls one's attention and one's interest, I think, to think that, a trip with a delegation from a church, could have such a focusing and inspiring effect.
Yeah, trip in 1998 changed my life,
Mm-hmm.
and has now led to the changing of hundreds of other American lives and thousands of kids around the world. So we can make a difference.
Right. And I think that I find it very powerful for me, because the problem of orphans around the world is kind of an abstract problem that immediately becomes overwhelming to me. But if I read your book and I look at concrete examples, I realize that with collaboration and with careful planning, you can make a difference that carries on so that generations of orphans can receive services through the same initial effort from church members and generous people.
Well, it's the story of the Good Samaritan, like, who is our neighbor? And so in a global society, I maintain our neighbor is not just other people here in our community, state, or nation. It's a global community. So our neighbor are those in need around the world. God doesn't care any less for people in sub-Saharan Africa as he does for Americans.
That's right. It's very important in our culture. Family is sort of the foundation of everything. And it seems to me that the problem of people who are orphaned just sort of dissolves the family. I mean, there's no family. So and I really do think it's important for us, particularly so perhaps in America, in the Western world, to have the vision of our faith go beyond the boundaries of where we live and back into the farthest stretches of the world, the way Jesus first sent the disciples.
Yeah. So I'm a United Methodist, of course. You're congregational. But you know about John Wesley. And Wesley said he saw the whole world as his parish. And he also said that caring for orphans was the highest form of charity. What happened to me when I was in my church in New Milford, I was there for 12 years, I found that my parish became my world.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so absorbed in the day-to-day struggles of church members and making our budget and getting our committees and having my sermon that I sort of lost track of what was happening in the world. And as you arrived today, we were talking a few minutes about this situation during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's a crisis,
right,
for you, for me, for every teacher in our country, every healthcare worker, every person trying to find a living, restaurant owners, airline industries. Mm-hmm. You go right on down the line. We've all been impacted by this. But I realized at some point that my world had to be bigger than my congregation and bigger than my community. And that's why I sort of been branching out and trying to get American Christians to look beyond our own focus and think of those in need. So the orphans around the world, 150 million orphans, every day is a crisis for them.
Right.
Every day.
Right.
It didn't start with a pandemic. It started when their mom or dad died.
Right. And the what takes our attention right in this moment, the difficulties of handling the disruptions from the coronavirus, are just another crisis added on top of sort of a constant chaos and crisis that orphans live through in so many different places around the world.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for us to be able to see beyond our immediate circle, our immediate congregations, you know, uh, to have a sense of the worldwide church and the mission that's there, and hopefully then to come to a realization through participation that, in fact, the work that is done comes back in kind of a reflection of the faith, so that it's hard to tell whom is ministered to the most. In other words, there's such a ministry that's received by people who have the opportunity to receive the gratitude, to witness hope and wonder and joy in the midst of circumstances that seem so impossible to us who are accustomed and take for granted a much greater level of comfort. But to experience that joy and that faith and that gratitude, I think is very powerful. That surely must have been what happened to the group that traveled in 1998.
I think I've preached this, you've preached this. We receive more than we give when we give.
Right.
And I think that's what you're saying. So I have friends, some of the best friends in the world, because I'm connected to people who are involved in this mission and ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd make this promise to you also. We're all living in a time of decline of the mainline churches. And my denomination is about to split over the issue of sexual identity. You had your time with it 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Our congregations have been declining, but caring for orphans is the one thing that brings our congregations together. And as you and your congregation get more involved, I can guarantee that your church will find unity in this and will grow again. So my church in New Milford, where I was for 12 years, and here in North Haven, we had Republicans and Democrats. Mm-hmm. We disagreed on political issues. Mm-hmm. We disagreed on theological issues. But those people, they made sure the kids in Mozambique got fed and were cared for. That was the one thing we cared for in unity about. Mm-hmm. So Christian right, I've said this 100 times, Christian right, the Bible says 30 times to care for orphans. If you're Christian right, you should be caring for orphans. Mm-hmm. Christian left is social gospel, social ministry. You should be caring for orphans. So it brings the Christian right and Christian left together like almost no other issue. Right. And that's a blessing. And then when the people in our towns and cities see that we're caring for orphans, which is what the Bible tells us to do, and not fighting over sexual identity or the color of the carpet or what time to have worship service,
right,
then they'll see that the church is doing what it's supposed to do, and they'll start coming back. That's been my experience.
Yeah, to reach beyond so much effort being spent on caring for an institution and struggling with maintaining traditions for tradition's sake, but rather to have the chance to see faith at work, love being made visible, and then to have the opportunity to celebrate the grace and the joy that comes through that, faith in action.
I think you guys watching can see why Scott is a good friend of mine and why we've bonded. And I look forward to our continuing journey. I'm now 5 miles from your church. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you timed it. It's about 5 miles from your church. Mm-hmm. And I hope that you and your church members will feel welcome to come here to our beautiful conference and retreat center. Mm-hmm. And it will continue to build our relationship in the coming weeks and months.
Yes, indeed. I hope so too. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Scott.
Absolutely an honor. An honor. Thank you for your work and your passion and your leadership.